Hello and welcome back to Diverse Thinking, Different Learning. So glad to have you joining us. As the school year comes to a close, and yes, it is that time, summer begins and many parents find themselves asking the same question: how do I help my child keep learning without turning summer into more school? And that's why I decided to re-air one of our most important summer conversations. In this episode, I speak with one of my favorite people, Ashley Harding. We discuss how to strike the balance between giving children the rest they need and creating opportunities for growth, confidence, independence, and learning. Summer doesn't have to be all academics, and it doesn't have to be all downtime either. Ashley shares practical, evidence-based strategies for helping children, especially those who think and learn differently. Help them make the most of the summer months while still enjoying being kids. If you're thinking about summer reading, routines, executive functioning, or simply how to set your child up for a successful return to school in the fall, this conversation is worth another listen. Let's jump in. Today, we're welcoming back a very special guest, Ashley Harding, founder of North Star Academics. If you missed her first appearance, I encourage you to go back and listen because her insights on academic mastery, self-efficacy, and the importance of belonging were incredibly powerful. And I'm going to put a link to that episode in the show notes. Ashley is a passionate advocate for diverse learners and a committed member of the Child Nexus community. Her work is grounded in helping students not just achieve, but thrive. And that includes recognizing the full humanity of kids with learning challenges. Today, we're taking the conversation one step further. Summer is here. And while many parents and educators worry about learning loss, Ashley invites us to think differently. How can we use summer intentionally, not just to catch up academically, but to build confidence, foster independence, and allow kids the rest they desperately need? Join me in welcoming Ashley back to the podcast.
Millions of kids struggle with learning, processing, and social emotional difficulties. These challenges interfere with their ability to reach their full potential. Dr. Karen Wilson is here to help. Her extensive background in pediatric neuropsychology and higher education have prepared her for this unique mission. Listen as she delivers content to inform, educate, and empower parents and educators. This will enable you to identify challenges that kids face and get them on the road to achieving their full potential. This is Diverse Thinking, Different Learning by Child Nexus.
Hi, Ashley. Welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Dr. Karen. You know, I always love being here with you.
I am so happy to have you here once again. Of course, when I was thinking about summer and, the anxiety that a lot of parents experience over the summer about what to do, how much support do my kids need, I thought of you immediately.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much for responding and agreeing to have this conversation, because I know a lot of parents did some pre-planning and thought about this well in advance, but some parents, it's June or it's July and they're thinking, okay, school is starting back in 4 weeks. What can I do now? We've done our vacations. Should I be doing something now to prepare for the next academic year? And we talked about the importance of balance over the summer. So I'm excited to talk to you about this. Many parents are anxious about the possibility of academic regression over the summer. Is there a way that we can reframe summer from a deficit mindset to an opportunity mindset?
Yes. Well, first off, I have to say it's always a pleasure being here. So thank you again for having me. You could ask me to talk about anything and I will become an expert just so I can come back and talk with you. But no, I mean, I've been talking to families all month and everybody is at this frantic rush of it already feels like June, right? Even as early May, we were already scheduled so far out and everyone is almost respectfully at a point of exhaustion that, we're all pushing towards quote unquote the end. And I always like to remind my families, we're not working with widgets. We are working with these wonderful beings that have various needs beyond their academic standing. And so when we think about summer regression, I always look at it from the perspective of we've had these heightened marks of advancement and growth academically. we need time to allow that integration, to allow that information to actually resonate with our students, to allow them to adapt to the growth that they've experienced all school year, and to actually exercise those other parts and those other domains of their brains and their interests, like athletics, athletics and sports, drama and the arts. Some of our students have internships and other varied interests outside of school. But then we've got the mental health needs. And those are the ones that I see to be most pressing and critical for our students, especially over the past couple summers. And so I do frame it for families around what is the most pressing need. Between September and May, we know that pressing need is academic mastery, usually reflected in grade performance. But during July through August, for a lot of our students, the most pressing need is rest, rejuvenation, alignment, and being able to articulate what the needs and the goals will be come the next school year.
And I think that is so important because I think there are some misconceptions about how much academic work children should be doing during the summer. And, I used to just play over the summer. Academics was not even in my mind. All the kids on my street would play over the summer, ride bikes and everything. But I think in this time where there's so much competition and there's so much pressure, I feel, for students to not fall behind and be ready for the next academic year, there's kind of this belief that without doing something academic over the summer, your kid is going to fall behind. But I'm so glad that you mentioned that they have to do other things as well. They need rest. They need rejuvenation. They need to be able to lean into their talents and gifts and interests that they may not have had time to do during the academic year.
That's critical. And if we even look at it from the standpoint of what is the end all goal of this academic growth, of course, it is the mastery and being able to function as an individual, as an adult. But for most of our kids, if not all, it's to gain college admissions to their ideal or top school. Well, those schools are also looking at how are you as a whole person outside of the classroom. Yeah. And that doesn't begin, and I want to highlight this for families, that doesn't begin 11th grade summer. That begins for most of our students as early as middle school. Schools want to know who you are, what you've done, who you've engaged with, what are some of the achievements in terms of your individuation. And that's a big thing that I talk to families about is how is your child starting to express themselves outside of the family system, outside of the norms in your household. Well, those experiences traditionally come from them being able to find independence outside of school, outside of home, and their own interests. And that can only be afforded to them when we start to take some of the very structured planning that we see during the school year out of the way, and we allow them to be a little bit more malleable to govern how they want to spend their time, what their interests are, and really developing a strong mastery and skill set outside of the rigor of our core competencies at school. But I also want to say, I do want to give credence to families who are concerned with this. There are things that you can do, but I do love to highlight it doesn't have to be as rigorous and structured as it has been from September to May.
Yes. And that is a really key thing to kind of highlight for families, because I think particularly if you have a child, a teen who has struggled during the academic year, parents want to do more, but I think it's important, like we've been saying, to be intentional, but also have a balanced plan for summer, identifying, the kind of need there might be for academic support, but you don't want to overwhelm the child over the summer after just finishing and completing what could have been a very difficult, stressful year.
Absolutely. And I would say, post-COVID, we are seeing a very different student and family profile, still high achieving, still students who have great potential and great family structures for excellence. But the amount of emotional and I would say both physical and emotional exhaustion our kids face the first 2 years of this decade. So our 2020, remember, we all walked into it saying new decade, new me. And we found out that, yes, it would be all of those things, but not necessarily in the way in which we thought it would. we're looking 3 years ahead now. And these are kids who are still catching up and making those academic gains from the loss that they experienced 5 years ago. And we've got families who have been trucking along for the past 5 years, kind of pulling things forward. So when I look at what are the needs of our students, I also like to reflect back to parents. What are the needs of your family? Does your family need a break? Do you as parents need to be able to say we're taking a little less control and structure off for all of us so that we can have the full respite that we need to be able to really get to a point of homeostasis where our full nervous systems have been reset so that we can go into the next year not just focused and ready for mastery, but ready to also be adaptable to the hurdles that we know we're going to experience every school year. Every school year has a challenge. Every school year is going to present a new, and I say obstacle, but it's not an obstruction to equity and growth, but an obstacle that's going to make us stronger. But if we're constantly fighting just the natural need for rest and reset, this is the time for both families, both parents and students to take that time off. So the way I've been discussing this is my parents, if you don't mind me sharing, has been leading them into how do we scale and scaffold so that we maximize both the rest and the, as I like to put it, the restructuring that's necessary. And you guys can't see, but I'm using restructuring with air quotes.
In quotes.
I always like to frame for families, June should be a time where we start to scaffold down. So this is where we evaluate what's worked. We applaud and congratulate the growth and the achievement. Yesterday, I had a session with a student who actually is going to have to remediate math. And we've discussed this. He's well aware of it. But this past week, he got an A on a math test. And so it was a wonderful time to highlight the achievement of you haven't quit. We know what you're going to have to do, but you haven't taken your foot off the gas. And for him, the moment I said that, it was almost like this sigh of relief washed over him because I expressed to him, that's a part of your growth. Getting an A is not always the only sign of growth and development as a teenager. So applauding our students for the growth and development that they've seen, allowing them to articulate what did and did not work for them. That way we can start to restructure what would be beneficial for the next year. And then allowing the freedom for June to just be a time of rest. No expectations, very low structure, consistent at home routines, but very low impact. Then we go into July knowing that is our time of travel. That's typically for my student athletes, their heightened time of, really incubating into those other activities. And for parents of student athletes, that's just a new stressor. It doesn't always signify rest and relief for them. It's just the newest domain of expectations. And then for my team, we always start to scaffold, well, then we'll see you again in August. So as a parent, we like to take the stress off of you of, we may not see you for 6 weeks, but when we start again, here are the 5 or 6 things that we're going to cover before the school year. Usually it's previewing curriculum. So if we have partner schools that will give us the curriculum ahead of time, we'll preview at least the first month of curriculum so our students go back really confident. We'll make sure that we've reviewed foundational skills so that learning loss that parents concern themselves with or are worried about, we've been able to cover. We also focus on our executive functioning skills, which I hope we get to a little later in our conversation, to make sure we haven't lost those really great structural and foundational adaptive skills. We go over what are our new goals. My goals for 9th grade cannot be my goals for 10th grade. I'm no longer a 9th grader. And then we go over identity and individuation. So who am I in this new school year? What are some of the social, emotional, what are some of the other outside growth goals that need to be incorporated into how I show up?
That is such a well-balanced plan. It's well-balanced. And like I said before, it's intentional, right?
Exactly.
And there's the work and there's the preparation for the next academic year. But like you're saying, that shouldn't start in June, right? I mean, no, it can't, because rest, like we've been saying, it plays an important role in learning and brain development, especially for students who learn and think differently, for our neurodivergent kids. And so that rest is essential. You can't just finish the school year and then jump into a highly intensive reading program that's 4 hours a day without any break for that child who has been struggling. And there are, I've talked to parents who want to do it all. They want to support their kids. They want to do all the camps, the tutoring, the structure. And what they find is that their kids burn out really quickly in June, in July. And this is such a great reminder to them about the balance that is essential for children and teens.
And I want to say, and then I'm specifically speaking to our BIPOC families, but really this applies to everybody. Rest is resistance. The book, Tricia Hershey, is amazing. It's all about the idea that we have been taught that our value comes from our production, right? And for many of us in this country, that is almost our history, that our value and the necessity of our life was only based on what we produce and the ease that we give to somebody else in society. We become commodities. Even those of us who are high performing and high earning, we're constantly sacrificing rest over production or consumption, however we want to look at it. And when we think about what are the images and what are the values that we're teaching our kids, if we're saying balance is important and identity is important and relationships are important, we have to give them an opportunity to have time for that. And sometimes that time of rest may look like I'm spending a weekend at a friend's house. And yes, mama, we're sleeping 14 hours and we're up until 4 a.m. And I'm definitely speaking to all my middle and high school moms and dads out there. But we are affording them the opportunity to start to gauge for themselves, how do I develop balance and an identity where I can say no to something to say yes to something else? And I have a lot of families, especially of young girls and young anywhere from 10 to 11 all the way up to senior year, who are saying, I'm just concerned that they don't have balance. I watch them work until 2 a.m. to get homework done. They're taking courses that may be too rigorous for them across the board. And what is that doing to their overall confidence? What is that doing to their ability to govern themselves as an adult? And this is the time for parents to have a very safe space to say, well, I'll give them 6 to 8 weeks to start to define for themselves what balance looks like, what my rest season looks like, what I need to be a whole and complete person, both in my relationships and in my overall pursuits. And how do I navigate those things? Because we know as adults, it's never 50-50. I haven't seen my best friend in so long. We voice note every day, but I haven't seen her in so long. But I know what I need to feel balanced in all the domains of my life. And I'm an adult, and that takes dexterity. We have to give kids that ability to learn that at a much younger age.
Yes. And, earlier you talked about this not only applying to children and teens, but applying to the whole family. And I feel like as adults, as parents, it's so important for us to have that rest and that balance over the summer as well, because we are on that hamster wheel with our kids during the academic year. And we also need that balance of rest and restructuring over the summer. And I think it's also an opportunity and a time for reconnection. We've been talking about the importance. Connection is so key to mental health. We've been talking about mental health, but feeling connected to the people in your life that you love, your family members, that is so important. And it's such a great buffer against the stress of the world and a key to the, really strong mental health. And so it is an opportunity to, go to the beach and to sit in the house and do nothing and to cook together because the kids aren't at school. And so I feel like it's also an opportunity for reconnection within the family unit.
Absolutely. And I have to say this 1,000 times over, although I know every parent knows this, your child will do what you do, not what you say. So when we are talking about rest, when we're talking about connection, when we're talking about that, if we say we're going to the beach and Mom and dad and all the adults are checking email and doing
Yeah. And they have their phone out
and
their
we have our
laptop
phones
under the
out
umbrella.
and we under the umbrella, or I'm not even leaving the hotel room. I'll come down and see you guys after my 7 Zooms because I'm on vacation, but I can still work remotely. We are still giving them a model of balance is secondary to production. And the reality is that at home, your child feels not what you say and not the culture of their family. They feel your nervous system. They will adapt and they will co-regulate to your nervous system. And parents for so long have been doing a phenomenal job, especially, and I want to go back to our pandemic era, making the most abnormal thing normal and healthy and safe for their child. It still has to continue now. We are still feeling the ripple effects today. So I tell my parents all the time, if you're going to the vineyard, please go to the vineyard. Don't take the summer reading. Please, please go bike riding. Please go to get some lobster rolls, especially if you're in Los Angeles. Please go get a good lobster roll. Please enjoy the time away, because that week that you've given yourself for rest and rejuvenation will carry you through the rigor of what we know we will face the last week in August or the first week in September when we resume school. But for families who do want to have even just a culture of we're still learning, we're still engaged, even if it's fun, I ask them to do small things. Have a family book club. Have a family activity where if we do have chores or we do have certain structures at home, we're still doing them collectively. And maybe we're taking the time to have more conversations at dinner versus everybody kind of eats independently. Give yourself structured fun if that's what the culture of your household calls for. But understand that your child needs the time to just be, as we talked about, the kid that plays outside, the kid that feels that time is a Morpheus, that I don't have a structure of I'm calendared every 2 hours, that I'm allowed to just be present in the moment.
Yes. I'm taking a short pause from our conversation to tell you about one of our Child Nexus school partners, Frostig School. Looking for a school that's a right fit for your child with diverse learning needs? Frostig School is a well-rounded learning environment that elevates and celebrates every student on their journey to becoming successful, contributing members of society. Frostig has campuses in Pasadena and West Los Angeles that offer a full range of academic, elective, and support services for neurodivergent children in grades 1 through 12. Learn more at frostigschool.org. Now back to our conversation. And I feel when parents are, and there are real concerns about learning and learning loss, but there are also some non-traditional ways to support learning. And, we talked about executive functioning over the summer, where you can still get growth, but it doesn't have to be in a one-on-one setting with an educator in order to get that. It can be planning a summer vacation and have your kids involved in that. Let's plan a family cookout. That is such a great thing to get kids on board and excited about. And what do we have to do? That's planning, that's organization, it's managing your time, it's thinking ahead. It's all of those things are involved, and they also support learning, but in a non-traditional way.
Absolutely. I can't tell you how fun it has been. So I've always worked with students over the summer, and it's usually like that's the only time Miss Ashley is everyone's best friend, because I show up with donuts and we're doing science experiments. We're throwing Mentos into every bottle of soda. Like, we are doing all the things that you can't do at 6:00 on a Tuesday when we're trying to actually solidify a plan for achievement. But what I can say is, I have the most adorable story. I have students that love to cook, 2 twins. Like, when I say love to cook, like, their reward every day they saw me was like, you can go home and watch a Junior Chef. Like, they loved it. Well, how did we master fractions? Learning how to bake. Because we had to figure out what a third versus a half versus a fourth. And just that exposure of being able to see numbers and values in a different domain from an academic textbook for them, it took the pressure away. It gave them the confidence that I've seen this before. I could see visually the difference in sizes. So now I had a different framing of what these measurements meant, but it was in something enjoyable. And we know that kids are more likely to master and retain information when it's easy and when it's in an academic environment or non-academic environment that they enjoy. So I would tell families, please, if you want to integrate math into grocery shopping, giving your teenager a budget, cooking, creating different opportunities for them to earn an allowance, whatever the allowance may be for you. These are great ways to still expose them to the systems and skills that they've learned all year, but the stakes are so much lower. The pressure has been taken off of everyone.
Absolutely. I completely agree. Are there any other non-traditional activities other than cooking that you've seen are helpful for students to develop those executive functioning skills?
Yes. So I always like to remind my families, please do as much real world learning as possible. Go to a museum, travel. Like when I say travel, I don't care if you go from one side of the city or not, hop on the train, go downtown, do what you want to do. Expose your kids to cultures, to languages that they haven't heard before. For a lot of our students, they do travel and they do wonderful travel globally. And so that's a time for them as a family, not only to be connected, but maybe give your child, especially as they're older, a preview of where are we going and what are the places that you want to discover, and doing some journal writing. I can't express to families enough, when we're talking about academic loss, what we're talking about is the disengagement from all academic frameworks. That does not mean your child's journaling and your child's ability to write, whether it's stories, poetry, whatever it is that they're interested in. That keeps them engaged with the process. That will buffer from that learning loss. I also love to have them do creative projects, sometimes even intergenerational. So when we're talking about traveling, if you've got grandma and grandpa coming, cousins coming, doing a beautiful family tree, doing something that incorporates other members of the family, gives them the exposure to other competencies. Now, when we're talking about executive functioning skills, all of my students, please turn this podcast off because you are not going to love Miss Ashley. We're going to keep a routine in the morning. That is the one thing where parents are non-negotiable and I am non-negotiable. What time you wake up is between you, your alarm, and your mom and dad. But you still have to have a routine of how do we get our day started. And that's just critical because we know that for especially my students with ADHD or tend to have trouble starting an initiative, waking up and getting started, we don't want to lose the momentum we have seen during the school year. So for my executive functioning skills, I always like to have kids have some type of, if not 2 to 3 structured things that they're to complete in the morning. Usually it's wake up, make up your bed, have breakfast within a certain amount of time, do whatever the first task or chore of the day is. Then I like to ask my students to have some type of accountability. So if you do have like a weekly schedule of, doesn't matter what time these things get done, but they have to get done. Where's your chart? Where are these things noted? I always tell families, if it's not in your calendar and it's not written down, it doesn't exist because it's going to get lost in our brains. So we want to keep some of the frameworks that we've given them during the year throughout the summer, but we just take the consequence off. We take some of the time downness off and we make it a little bit more fluid to the schedule that affords them, one, the flexibility to initiate on their own, but two, to discern when it's most important to do for them.
Yes. And that structure being maintained over the summer really helps with the transition back to school. Because if you have kids who are waking up at 1 p.m. and then some days at 7 p.m., going to bed at midnight, other days, at 7 p.m., it just really throws things off and it makes the transition back to school so much more difficult.
Yes. And I want to say for your child, they may need the additional sleep. The thing that most of my students sacrifice over anything will be sleep during the school year. And I think for adults, if I have read our sleep studies well, we do as well. And that is both the quality of our sleep, but also the number of hours that we get. So please don't be surprised if your 5th grader is sleeping 12 hours and they walk out of their room one day 6 inches taller. These are things I have seen.
I've seen that in my house.
Cannot tell you how many times I've walked out of a house in June and come back in August and looked around like, I thought you were your dad. You were so big. When did this happen? So you should be prepared for the necessity of more food, more sleep, more rest, more social engagement. But the structure has to remain the same because your students' learning needs, their executive functioning skills, and the need around that has not necessarily changed. So keeping some routine, some semblance of structure actually is what they need. They may not articulate it, but their bodies crave that too.
Yes. And last time you were here, we discussed self-efficacy. And I feel like the summer months can be used to build that sense of confidence and capability in kids, like we talked about last time, in doing the things that you've talked about, sticking to a routine, helping with the cookout, helping with the family vacation, keeping that journal. All of those things can be used to really enhance that self-confidence that may have been lowered during the academic year.
So you guys could not see my face the moment Dr. Wilson said self-efficacy. I threw my head back. I have like a good old-fashioned chuckle of, yes, this is that time. Your child, respectfully, no matter where they are or their academic standing, has worked hard this year. That is the thing I want every student of mine and every student and family of across the country to understand. Our students are working and growing even in moments of regression, even in moments where we are finding I know you can do this, but you aren't doing what I'm asking. We're having that tailspin of why aren't things linearly going up? That's because we work with humans. Humans do not grow in one direction.
No, they do not.
No, we do not. And so when we are looking at what the summer affords our kids, is it's giving them an opportunity to see themselves obstructed from the view of their grades, of their teachers, and sometimes even mom and dad or all of the lovely support team that are constantly reinforcing for them what they still need to do. And it may not sound like that to us. And I'd like to think that my team and I do a great job of always using asset-based language and always heightening and celebrating our kids, but they know that we're in place because there's a gain to be made. And what we can give them over the summer is a beautiful opportunity to evaluate for themselves. What have I done? Who am I? What do I want? And who will I be next year? Those 4 domains are what we call self-reflection as adults. We know how important that is, but we don't teach it to our kids. Even our most reflective, holistic schools don't always have an opportunity to give kids the space to really see themselves as individuals and worthy, despite or in spite of whatever the gross gain is at that time in the classroom. So when I look at the summer, and again want to just reframe it to our executive functioning skills, there are 5 that I want our families to know we can applaud our students for and continue to reintegrate over the summer. First is our working memory. Have a great time with your memory games. Do a lot of fun recall for them. Do a lot of just routine building and applaud them for that. Second is initiating tasks. Please give your child time to do things independently. Give them an opportunity to show you who they are in their own domain, especially our older students. So if you've got a rising 12th grader and you've been scheduling them out to a T and you don't feel confident yet that they can govern themselves, this is the time for them to show you what they're capable of, because they'll show you next year when they're on their own as adults. So give them that freedom. Time management. If your child has been working with an educational therapist or an executive functioning coach, this is a term you're hearing every day. This is something they're practicing every day. This summer is a wonderful time for them to show you how they do and do not manage their time, but also how they think about time. Because our kids are very overstructured, calendared, shall we say, to almost T. And if you are one of my students, I make you calendar almost to the 15 minutes so that we really understand how time works. Let them show you that they know how to do this, even when they get it wrong. Because what you're also going to give them an opportunity is to reframe for themselves how to get back on track. The other piece is our planning and organizing. If your child's room within days of summer vacation looks like multiple people live in it, that there's a small village of people who have moved in and it's still just the one child, that's normal. Give them a deadline for when you'd like them to regroup and to organize themselves again, and let them show you that they have the skills to be able to do this. They may also show you how they know how to ask for help and advocate for their own structure at a time when they need a little bit more flexibility. And the last piece, and this is probably the one that we've been honing in on all conversation, is self-monitoring and reflection. Everything will not be done right the first time. I spoke to a principal a couple of weeks ago at a conference, and she said, even as adults, we have to allow ourselves to be in the first draft stage. Let your child be in the first draft of independence. They're going to have a setback. They're going to need to be able to advocate. They're going to need to learn how to ask for help. They're going to need to learn how to solve problems. They're going to need to learn how to try to do things 2 or 3 different times to get it right. This is a time for them to do that, because once they've developed those skills, then we see the confidence of somebody who says, I can try, make a mistake, bounce back, and keep doing that until I get it right.
Yes. Yes. I'm snapping my fingers for everything you just said. I am, because you've just concisely really reiterated what parents can do to support their child's developing brain, whether they're a younger child or a teen, how they can continue to develop those executive functioning skills, again, outside of a traditional learning environment. And again, it all, speaks to the balance, because that's what we want to do. We want to build those skills, but we want to also increase self-confidence, and we want them to feel successful, whatever success looks like for that student. It could be, I have redecorated my room and reorganized. I have bins ready for the next academic year. That is a success. But I think, one of the most important things that you said is really a time, making sure you have time for reflection, and also time to acknowledge how hard that student, that child, that teen has worked over the academic year. Acknowledge that and really let them know what you've seen in terms of their growth. And growth will look different for different kids, but acknowledge that growth and to praise that child for the work that went into everything that they had to accomplish over the academic year, and collaborate with them in terms of what do they want to do this summer. Right? Because so much of the academic year is, you have to do this. You have to go to school. You have to go to these classes. You have to do these projects. Now is the opportunity over summer to say, what would you like to do? What would you like to learn? I noticed that you really seem to enjoy art. Would you like to do more of that over the summer? So it's an opportunity to really, again, connect with our kids, but also give them an opportunity to co-plan what they're going to do over the summer.
And it's a beautiful opportunity when it's afforded. And I understand, every family is different, and we can't always afford what we want versus what we have to.
Right.
But I've had so many parents say, I didn't know he or she could do this. I didn't know she was so talented in this. I had no idea that he had this interest and was no one in the family is a savant in this way, or nobody taught him or her how to do this. This is so key, because your child has spent the past 10 months, for most of our kids, highly observed, right? They've got portals. Parents have so much access to their child's metrics, but not always. And I talk to families about this all the time. The actual quality time that you get with your child day in and day out may be an hour or two between all of the activities and bedtime. And so the learning, not just of who that independent child is, but for you as a family, of who's coming back into the fold. I started September with a 12-year-old. There's been a birthday, 4 inches of growth, a whole new friend circuit. And now I'm sitting in June with this 13-year-old who I had no idea had this interest or had this way of thinking. And as a parent, that is it's such a beautiful learning. But what it does for your child is create a safe space for them to share more. And that's something that I really want parents to understand, is that this is a great time of collective community for you as a family to learn more about yourself, but for your child to feel like this is my safe place of belonging. We've talked a lot before, Dr. Karen, about what North Star means to me and what we've created it to be. And really, we're grounded in Dr. Bettina Love's definition of belonging. And that's because our schools didn't always feel like, for our students, especially our students who are neurodivergent or BIPOC or marginalized in any other way, we haven't always felt like we belonged. We have code switched, we've masked, we've done all the things to fit in, but we haven't found a safe space. For some of our kids, they say that exists at home, where they are still in a performative measure to meet expectations. This can be an opportunity for your child to show you who he or she is, and you find a way to curate the next year for the new version of who they are, not constantly setting expectations and metrics against a goal they no longer have.
Right. It's just a wonderful, I feel like summer's a gift.
Yes.
You know, every summer is a gift, and it's an opportunity, like we said at the beginning, you know, to regroup, to restructure, to reconnect, and to learn things about your child that you may not have knew before. Right. And it's an opportunity. And I cannot thank you enough for being here and for sharing all of the words of wisdom that I think are going to be helpful for parents who are listening to this in July, in August, you know, whenever that is over the course of the summer. And I think it's actually, you know, information that will be valuable even as students are transitioning back to school. So again, I cannot thank you enough. I know that parents are going to want to connect with you, learn more about North Star Academics and how you all support students, not only during the summer, but throughout the school year. What is the best way for them to connect with you?
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you again. The best way for families to find us is on our website, which is northstaracademics.org. We also have a wonderful platform on social media. So our Instagram handle, North Star Academics, both on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. We share a lot of the tips and tricks that I talked about today. But we also have a great community of parents and other practitioners that we collaborate with. So it's a great opportunity just to get tidbits throughout the week of things that you can do as a family. But I also really love to hear from families directly. So feel free to also reach out to our office if you want to schedule just a consultation to learn more. And our phone number is 310-853-3208.
Wonderful. Thank you again. And have a great summer, Ashley.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining me for this conversation. One of the reasons I wanted to bring this conversation back is because the message remains just as relevant today as when it first aired. Summer is not just a break from school, it's an opportunity for children to build confidence, independence, executive functioning skills, and a stronger sense of who they are outside the classroom. I hope this discussion gave you some ideas for creating a summer that includes both rest and growth without adding unnecessary pressure. And as always, thank you for listening and for sharing the podcast with others and for being part of this community. I wish you and your family a wonderful summer, and I'll see you next time on Diverse Thinking, Different Learning.
Thanks for listening to Diverse Thinking, Different Learning by Child Nexus. For more resources, visit us online at childnexus.com.